Hey everyone, Adam and Amy here from Real Schools having a chat today about teacher wellbeing. Something that at the end of this semester, this Armageddon-y kind of semester, is definitely on people's minds. I know, Amy, you've been putting an enormous amount of work into teacher wellbeing, both where we've been and where we're at. Before this hit, before we had the impact on teachers that we've had over the last few months, where do you reckon broadly we were at in terms of teacher wellbeing?
Yeah, good question. I think teacher wellbeing is something that is definitely on the minds of teachers and has been for some time. What's interesting though, when you look at the research and kind of start to unpack it, is that we've got to remember teacher wellbeing is really a relatively new concept. It isn't something that's been around for as long as what perhaps the reading wars have and things like that around teaching and learning. When it comes to teacher wellbeing, it is still new. So if we talk, before COVID and before everything that has happened this year, we were having discussions around wellbeing with teachers. We knew it was a priority. Schools did have different approaches and frameworks that they were adopting and using. And it was certainly a conversation that popped up in staff meetings and things were happening. We even have we have wellbeing coordinators. And I think the distinction perhaps we need to make and understand is that when we have things like wellbeing coordinators, predominantly that's around student wellbeing and student mindfulness and student care, and really looking at what we're doing for teachers. And there is an overlap and a little bit around teacher wellbeing, but it's certainly not at the forefront like student wellbeing. And I think that's where the shift is perhaps coming about now.
So I tend to agree. I think we've been really responsive around student wellbeing, and we sort of plan for better wellbeing. With teachers, we're just reactive. That's something that you reckon we've fallen for, and that's why it's been sort of just there below the surface without us really acting on it.
It's hard too, I think, with students we're dealing with children, and so it's easier to teach a sequence of lessons for them and look at it that way. And with adults, when it comes to teachers, we are looking at really who we're being, not what we're doing. And I think our easy solution when it comes to teacher wellbeing, and this does come down to, because we know schools are busy and school leaders are busy and there's so many things happening, we want those quick fixes, and that's why it's that reactive approach. And so what I've seen and what I notice is that what we do really well in schools is that idea of self-care. But perhaps what's happening is that we're crossing over the term self-care and well-being and not really defining the difference that those two have and how they're actually quite different. But we do self-care in terms of, meeting-free weeks or hot chips on a Friday or chocolates in a staff room. And as teachers, we do love that and we really appreciate it.
I love hot chips.
I know, Hot Chip Friday. Yeah. But when we do that, it's almost like applying a Band-Aid to a wound. We're not really looking at embedded change, cultural shifts, and we're not addressing well-being as a person. It's almost just like that surface level stuff. It makes us feel good for a little bit, but it's not really helping change who we are.
Because I guess we're not, our well-being as educators is impacted negatively by the absence of hot chips. So there are other factors at play. And so if we're serious about wellbeing, we're serious about those factors. Do you reckon this COVID period has brought the notion of teacher wellbeing above that sort of just below the surface thing to now this is something that people are more conscious of?
Absolutely. I think if anything to be taken away from COVID in a positive response, it's going to be this. It really is highlighting and emphasising the work that teachers do. One of the things that research shows around teacher wellbeing in terms of having negative impacts is the perception of society and how teachers are held in society and what teaching is seen like, that 9 to 3 thing, all of these holidays, playing games all day. And my gosh, if you're a teacher in a classroom, you know that that's not true. But this perception around we have it easy almost makes it difficult to be able to break into the teacher wellbeing space, because
talk about it loudly.
It's like, come on guys,
we needed people to look behind the curtain and see how hard it really is.
Don't really have an issue. You're on holidays half the year, but we know that that's not the truth at all. And so what we now have in I guess a blessing in some way, by having that period of where learning was happening at home, people got an insight into what teaching is like. And that was with 1 or 2 children, or 4, not 30. And so we have now a conversation starting to happen around what teaching actually is, and the involvement in terms of teaching lessons and planning and content and curriculum and behavior management and all of those things now becoming a little bit more prominent for us. And that's where we can start to focus more on teacher wellbeing, because it is being talked about more.
I don't know, I always had a sense that, particularly when it comes out in a lot of schools, even I guess a lot of educators even complain about how data driven we are these days, and we're always trying to measure what we do and the impact of what we do. I've always had a sense that when it comes to teacher wellbeing, that it's actually in getting started, it's more about measuring or anticipating the cost of not doing it. Now, what do you see in your stuff about the impact of deciding not to address teacher wellbeing at this little critical historical juncture?
I think 2 big things will happen if we don't really start to put teacher wellbeing at the forefront of the agenda here around education. And one of those is we're going to lose amazing teachers. We're going to have teachers who are passionate and dedicated and love their job, just not be able to go on anymore.
We've got a problem with that, haven't we?
We know that it's overwhelming and that there's not enough time and that it's becoming more stressful and the curriculum's overcrowded and it's demanding, and we know all of that. But we're seeing teachers who are so passionate and care so much feel like they can't do a good job anymore because of everything else. It's making them crumble. It's impacting their well-being so much that they have to walk away.
Yeah.
And that's really painful to watch. And then I think the other thing that is going to happen is we're going to have teachers who, on the flip side, still care so much they can't walk away, but because their well-being isn't functioning optimally, the impact in that classroom is going to be around teaching and learning. And so we're going to see teaching and learning impacted and it not being able to be done at best.
The way that teacher wellbeing is not just about people arriving at work happy. They just do I can be so blunt, they do a crappy job when they're not in a good space in terms of their well-being.
But don't we all?
Teaching and learning. We're not immune to any other job in that regard, are we? We do a poor job when our own well-being is compromised.
The difference is we have to step up and do that job in front of 30 people.
Yeah.
We can't hide behind a computer. We can't have extra morning tea breaks. We can't go for a walk outside. We don't have those luxuries when we're having a day. Yeah. And I mean, it's totally human to have an off day or to not feel 100%. That's normal, but we still have to show up and put on that brave front and, act our way through a day. And we can't do a great job teaching and learning when that happens.
So part of the reason for this video today was to try and emphasise, I guess, my motivation for wanting to do this video today was a point that we discussed around, and you brought it up earlier in this video, about somebody gets put in charge of wellbeing, and that the transition to genuinely embedded school wellbeing, where you get high impact from your teachers in terms of teaching and learning, is when we move away from it being one person's job and towards it being everybody's job. What do you mean by that?
I think we have to look at teacher wellbeing as yes, it's about improving teachers as a collective, because if we can improve everyone, we're going to have a far better impact in that space. But at the moment, we're saying it's the teacher wellbeing coordinator's responsibility. It's not. We when we talk about students, when you mentioned data, we say it's everyone's data.
Yeah.
It's that teacher's data. And wellbeing it is for everyone to understand that they have a role to play in that. And sometimes we want to outsource that. We want to outsource it to the box of chocolates on the table or the meeting free weeks and think that that's okay. But what we have to understand is that our well-being for self is down to the responsibility of us as individuals as much as it is the collective. But when we all work together, because we're all working on ourselves and internally, but also how that affects and impacts everyone else, and have an understanding of that and a really clear vision around what that looks like, then we're starting to see it become embedded in cultures of schools, not it sits with that person.
There's a lot of ways that good practice works in a school. If you don't want a school that has 1 or 2 absolute guns and everyone else suffers, we want to deprivatise that practice. So it's like the things that we've got individuals, like you said, who are good at self-care, and they know what domain or what area of self-care they're good at. We just need to make sure that that's owned and shared.
Yeah, and I think we have to know that self-care is one element of what well-being is.
Yeah.
we do the self-care bit pretty good, and we talk about, you've got to make sure you eat the right food, and you've got to make sure you physically move yourself, and you've got to make sure mindfulness and meditation, the buzzwords right now, or go and do some yoga and whatever that might be. But we've also got to look a bit deeper in terms of when we talk about mindset, that's really about who you are and who you're being. It's not well doing. It's not what we do all the time. It's about what we're being. And so we've got to take it to that next level and really kind of start to unpack well-being in a way of understanding who we are and what that looks like. And that's different for everyone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you've unpacked some of this in a white paper.
I have.
Some of the risk stuff, but also some of the solution stuff as well that schools can start to think about. What's the title of that? How do people get their hands on it?
Yeah, so that's a title, Teacher Wellbeing, a Matter of Urgency, because it is a matter of urgency. We're not, in the white paper, I suggest that we're almost at crisis point, and I think we are. I think this is becoming a really big issue. So it's urgent, and we want to really start having real conversations about that. And that's what this white paper is for. So there's a little bit of research in there, there's some stats in there, and there's a few different frameworks around what teacher wellbeing could and should look like in schools for teachers.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. How do they get it?
Oh, yeah. How do they get it? Just let us know if you want one. So you can put a comment below in this video, and we'll make sure you get one, or email me at amy@realschools.com.au and you can grab one there as well.
No worries. All right, Amy, you wrote a newsletter before we finish up today that had 10 dares for people over the break. Could you give us three? What are your three favourite dares that you reckon that teachers need for their own wellbeing? I liked a couple of them.
Okay.
I think the idea of turning email off for a while is one that's got some traction. What are your big three things that you reckon teachers could do to properly recharge so that the next 100 days of learning in the second half of this year can be taken advantage of?
I think read a book that isn't about learning.
Yeah, I like that.
Read something just for fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably some of my own advice I need to take as well. So do that. Drink your coffee while it's hot. You can do that. That's important.
Not that one that you bought at 8 o'clock in the morning and you finish it at 11:30 in the morning. Yeah, good one. Yeah. And
just do nothing. Nothing. No devices, no technology, no noise. Just, get outside and sit and be with nature and feel the sunshine and breathe. Do nothing.
Canberra sunshine at this time of year, you sure?
Yeah, look, tops of 13 today. We're doing all right.
All right, that's not too bad. Not too bad. All right, we'll finish it up there. Right? We'll get back to people over the next few weeks with some more information on this. Hopefully. Yeah,
there's more coming, definitely.
So it can be a real focus for schools in the second half of this year.
Sounds great.
All right,
excited.
All right, talk to you soon.
Thanks.